The icy winds of the Ice Age were not merely a backdrop to prehistoric life. They were a constant, merciless adversary. Cavemen did not face winter as we understand it today, with insulated homes, modern clothing, and readily available food. Instead, every snow-laden gust and freezing night carried with it the threat of hypothermia, starvation, and predator attacks. The very environment seemed designed to test the limits of human endurance, and for those early humans, survival was not guaranteed. It is within this context of relentless cold and danger that the story of winter survival begins, a story of fear, ingenuity, and the delicate balance between life and death. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the landscape transformed. Daylight's warmth faded quickly, leaving behind a world of shadow and frost. Cavemen had to rely on instinct, knowledge, and cooperation to endure these nights. The contrast between the relative safety of their small, firelit shelters and the deadly cold outside could not have been starker. One misstep, one night spent unprepared, could mean the difference between life and death. This tense duality, the warmth of fire versus the icy threat outside, sets the tone for understanding prehistoric human resilience. Anthropologists have reconstructed the harshness of these winters through fossil records, cave paintings, and climate data. Temperatures could plunge far below freezing for weeks on end, and snowfall was relentless. Water sources froze, vegetation became scarce, and prey animals adapted to the cold, making hunting a far more dangerous and uncertain endeavor. In such an environment, early humans could not simply rely on luck. They had to develop strategies to counteract the overwhelming force of nature. This struggle against the elements is not just a story of survival. It is a story of adaptation, intelligence, and the very essence of human determination. The physical challenges were daunting. Hypothermia could set in within hours if the body remained exposed, while frostbite could permanently disable those caught unprepared. Food scarcity added another layer of danger, as the scarcity of plants and game during deep winter threatened malnutrition and starvation. Cavemen learned to anticipate these cycles, storing food when possible and planning hunting expeditions with extreme care. Even sleep became a calculated act, as rest was necessary to conserve energy, but carried inherent risks of vulnerability to predators or the cold. Every action, from lighting a fire to securing shelter, was critical and laden with consequence. Yet, it was not only the external environment that shaped winter survival. Human psychology played an equally important role. The fear of the unknown, the cold, and lurking predators pressed heavily upon communities, yet also forged bonds of cooperation. Families and tribes huddled together, sharing warmth, resources, and knowledge. Storytelling, early rituals, and communal activity provided comfort and guidance, reinforcing the collective strategies necessary for survival. The juxtaposition of fear and reassurance, danger and community, would define not only how they survived winter nights, but how they evolved socially and culturally. This section will also explore the stark contrasts inherent to life in the Ice Age. Night versus day, warmth versus cold, scarcity versus abundance, and life versus death all framed the caveman's experience. These contrasts were never abstract. They were tangible, pressing, and immediate. A poorly timed hunt could mean starvation. A failed fire could mean freezing to death, and a misjudged social interaction could fracture the fragile cohesion of the group. Yet, amidst this constant struggle, early humans displayed remarkable ingenuity. They learned to read the landscape, predict the behavior of animals, and harness the natural resources around them to their advantage. By examining these opening dynamics, the environmental threats, the physiological challenges, and the psychological pressures, we gain a clear picture of why winter survival was not merely a seasonal inconvenience, but a defining struggle of prehistoric life. It was within these harsh conditions that some of humanity's earliest and most enduring innovations emerged, from controlled fire to clothing and shelter, from communal strategies to ritual practices. This introduction sets the stage for a journey into a world where every decision mattered, every moment carried risk, and the very act of surviving the night became an extraordinary achievement. In immersing the viewer in this frozen world, the stage is set for the sections to follow. They will explore hunting, shelter, fire, tools, social life, and spiritual practices, all within the context of a relentless winter landscape. The goal is not only to inform, but to transport the audience, to make them feel the biting wind on their skin, the anxiety of hunger, and the relief of firelight. By beginning with the stark reality of the Ice Age winter, the documentary establishes the central narrative tension. How did early humans endure, adapt, and ultimately thrive in a world that seemed intent on extinguishing them? This exploration of fear, resilience, and ingenuity in the frozen world creates a foundation upon which all subsequent sections will build, offering both dramatic tension and educational insight. It is here, in the struggle against the cold, that the story of human endurance truly begins. The human body, as we know it today, is the result of millions of years of adaptation, and the Ice Age tested its limits like few other environments could. Cavemen faced freezing temperatures that would cripple an unprepared modern person in a matter of hours. Survival was a delicate interplay between biology and environment, with the body's natural mechanisms constantly challenged by the extreme cold. From metabolism to fat distribution, from extremity circulation to shivering patterns, every physiological response mattered, determining whether a person lived to see another day or succumb to the unforgiving winter. Cavemen relied heavily on their innate ability to generate heat. The body's first line of defense against cold was metabolic activity. Shivering, for instance, was not merely an involuntary reaction. It was a vital, energy-consuming process designed to raise the body's core temperature. Brown fat, concentrated in specific regions, provided additional insulation, burning calories to produce heat efficiently. Unlike modern humans with controlled indoor climates and high-calorie diets, prehistoric people had to maintain these biological defenses naturally, often under caloric stress. Hunger, coupled with cold, magnified the risk of hypothermia, turning each day into a careful balancing act between energy intake and expenditure. Extremities were particularly vulnerable. Fingers, toes, ears, and noses often froze first, leading to frostbite and potentially permanent damage. Cavemen learned, through trial and error, to protect these critical areas, not only with clothing but through behavior, curling up, tucking limbs close, and keeping small fires nearby. The contrast between exposed and protected body parts could mean life or death, and understanding these vulnerabilities was an essential part of survival knowledge passed down through generations. Over time, these challenges may have even influenced slight evolutionary changes, favoring those with higher resistance to cold or more efficient metabolic responses. Beyond physical defenses, the human body exhibited remarkable adaptability in the face of prolonged cold exposure. Blood flow regulation, for example, prioritized the core to maintain organ function, while extremities became secondary. Heart rate and respiration adjusted to conserve energy, and even sleep patterns adapted to seasonal cycles, with deeper, more restorative sleep being essential for survival in periods of scarcity. This physiological adaptability, however, was only effective when coupled with environmental strategies such as shelter, clothing, and fire. Without these aids, even the most resilient body could falter under relentless frost. The mental and psychological responses of the human body were equally critical. Cold has a direct impact on cognition, inducing fatigue, irritability, and slow decision-making. Cavemen were acutely aware of this, understanding that survival required mental acuity as much as physical resilience. Social cohesion, cooperation, and communal vigilance often offset the cognitive and emotional challenges of cold stress. In groups, individuals could rely on one another for warmth, guidance, and support, creating a feedback loop in which both body and mind were strengthened by collective survival strategies. One of the most fascinating aspects of human adaptation during the Ice Age was the interplay between culture and biology. Clothing, for instance, supplemented natural defenses, effectively extending the limits of the body's tolerance. Layers of animal hides provided insulation, while footwear, mittens, and head coverings protected the most vulnerable extremities. These innovations did not replace physiological adaptation, but worked in tandem with it, creating a combined system of survival that allowed humans to endure conditions far beyond their natural baseline. The evolution of these practices reflected a growing understanding of the environment and a proactive approach to mitigating bodily vulnerability. Diet also played a crucial role in shaping the body's response to winter. High-calorie foods, particularly fats from hunted animals, were essential to sustain metabolic heat production. Seasonal scarcity meant that cavemen had to maximize nutrient intake when available, storing energy in both body fat and preserve food for leaner times. This interplay between diet and physiology created a cycle in which survival depended on careful observation of seasonal changes, hunting success, and energy conservation. The human body, therefore, was both a biological and strategic instrument, tuned over generations to respond to the pressures of the frozen world. The extreme environment also forced cavemen to develop acute sensory awareness. Sight, hearing, and even smell were heightened by necessity. Detecting predators, locating scarce food, and navigating through snow-covered landscapes require the body to function at peak efficiency despite the draining cold. This synergy of sensory perception and physical endurance exemplified how deeply human survival strategies were intertwined with the body's evolutionary capacities. The contrast between vulnerability and capability created a constant tension, making every action, from walking across a frozen plain to tending a fire, loaded with significance. Understanding the human body in the Ice Age also provides insight into the origins of long-term survival strategies. Those who could endure cold, store energy, and maintain mental clarity had higher chances of surviving to reproduce and pass on these traits. Evolution, therefore, was not just a slow biological process, but a response to immediate environmental pressures that shaped both physical and social behaviors. The body, mind, and culture became interconnected survival tools, each reinforcing the other in the relentless fight against winter. In sum, the human body during the Ice Age was a complex, adaptable system, continuously responding to one of the harshest climates in Earth's history. Its physiological responses, shivering, fat metabolism, extremity protection, and cognitive resilience, combined with early cultural adaptations, created a delicate yet robust framework for survival. By studying these mechanisms, we gain not only an appreciation for the endurance of our ancestors, but also a deeper understanding of how extreme environments can drive evolution, ingenuity, and the very foundations of human resilience. The story of a human body in the cold sets the stage for the next exploration. How cavemen harnessed their environment, tools, and social structures to confront the relentless challenges of the Ice Age. Winter transformed the landscape into a frozen and unforgiving environment, making the hunt one of the most perilous yet essential activities for prehistoric humans. Unlike the warmer seasons, when animals were more abundant and vegetation supplemented their diet, winter demanded precise planning, acute observation, and extraordinary endurance. Cavemen faced not only the challenge of locating prey, but also the physical strain of moving through deep snow, ice-covered terrain, and bitter winds. Every hunt was a calculated risk, where the difference between success and failure could mean life or death for the entire group. The hunt, in this sense, became a central pillar of winter survival, a stage where courage, intelligence, and teamwork were tested under extreme conditions. Scarcity dictated strategy. Large game such as mammoths, reindeer, and bison provided the calories necessary to survive the freezing months, but these animals were highly mobile and often migrated to find food themselves. Cavemen had to track these creatures over long distances, interpreting signs left in the snow, listening for distant calls, and reading subtle changes in the landscape. Knowledge of animal behavior became essential. Understanding where herds were likely to feed or where predators might be hunting them offered a critical advantage. The contrast between a well-planned ambush and a failed pursuit could not have been starker. Success meant nourishment and warmth, while failure could result in starvation or exposure to the elements. Hunting in winter demanded ingenuity in tools and techniques. Spears and stone-tipped projectiles were common, but the icy environment necessitated modifications and adaptations. Hunters sometimes constructed snow blinds or used natural terrain features to conceal themselves, allowing them to approach prey without detection. Tracking skills required not only keen eyesight, but also a deep understanding of animal tracks, trails, and feeding signs hidden beneath snow. Primitive traps and pits were occasionally employed to supplement active hunting, creating opportunities for success without the constant physical strain of pursuit. These methods reveal a sophisticated understanding of both the environment and animal behavior, illustrating how necessity drove innovation. Group coordination was another critical factor. Hunting large animals in the deep cold was rarely a solo endeavor. It required a combination of strategy, timing, and cooperation. Groups would often plan drives, where animals were funneled toward ambush points or traps. Roles were assigned based on experience, strength, and knowledge. Some individuals distracted or guided the herd, while others positioned themselves to strike. Communication, though primitive, was essential, and subtle signals or prearranged cues could mean the difference between a successful hunt and disaster. The social dimension of hunting underscored the interdependence of community members, highlighting the collective effort required to overcome winter scarcity. The physical demands of winter hunting were immense. Hunters had to endure sub-zero temperatures for hours, sometimes days, while carrying weapons, navigating treacherous terrain, and maintaining vigilance against both prey and predators. Fatigue, hunger, and exposure created a dangerous feedback loop, where mistakes were amplified by the environment's severity. Success required careful energy management, often alternating periods of intense exertion with rest near fire or shelter. The act of hunting, therefore, was as much about strategy and endurance as it was about skill or strength, combining physiology, intelligence, and environmental knowledge in a delicate balance. Seasonal adaptation influenced prey choice and hunting timing. Certain animals were more vulnerable in the winter due to migration patterns, weakened conditions, or concentrated herds. Cavemen capitalized on these opportunities, but they also had to adapt to unexpected changes. Snowstorms could obscure tracks, sudden freezes could alter water access, and shifting predator populations could compete with humans for the same food sources. The unpredictable nature of the winter landscape forced hunters to remain flexible, improvising strategies and learning from failure. These experiences not only ensured immediate survival, but also contributed to the gradual accumulation of knowledge passed down through generations. Preservation of meat was another vital consideration. Unlike warmer months, where food could be consumed immediately, winter demanded storage techniques to maximize the utility of each kill. Cavemen learned to butcher efficiently, dry meat, and even store it under snow or ice to prevent spoilage. Fat-rich parts of animals were particularly prized for both nutrition and warmth, burned in fires for heat and consumed for caloric intake. The ability to extend the usefulness of a hunt directly impacted group survival, highlighting the interconnectedness of hunting, preparation, and long-term planning. The hunt also carried psychological significance. Success brought relief, confidence, and social cohesion, while failure could lead to anxiety, conflict, and demoralization. The contrast between triumph and despair was heightened by the harsh winter environment, making each kill not just a matter of sustenance, but a testament to skill, endurance, and collective effort. Early humans learned that survival was rarely the result of individual strength alone. It was the culmination of knowledge, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of both prey and landscape. Risk management was embedded in every aspect of hunting. Prey animals were not the only danger. wolves, saber-toothed cats, and other predators competed for the same resources, posing constant threats. Cavemen had to navigate the dual hazards of hunting for food while avoiding becoming food themselves. Group strategies, vigilance, and defensive measures were essential components of every expedition. Fire, noise, and even the strategic use of terrain provided protection, allowing hunters to minimize risk while maximizing success. This delicate dance between predator, prey, and human ingenuity defined the essence of winter survival. Ultimately, the hunt in winter exemplifies the interplay between human intelligence, physical resilience, and environmental mastery. It was not merely an act of obtaining food. It was a complex survival system involving observation, planning, cooperation, and adaptation. Each successful hunt reinforced skills, strengthened social bonds, and ensured the continuity of life through the harshest months. The lessons of these hunts, about preparation, awareness, and collective effort, laid the groundwork for subsequent sections on foraging, fire mastery, and shelter construction, which together formed a comprehensive strategy for enduring the Ice Age's relentless cold. While hunting large game was essential for survival, it was by no means the only source of sustenance for Ice Age humans. The frozen landscape of winter concealed a hidden pantry of roots, nuts, berries, and other plant materials that required knowledge, patience, and intuition to uncover. Unlike hunting, which demanded physical prowess and group coordination, gathering relied heavily on observation, memory, and seasonal understanding. Cavemen had to discern what was edible, what was poisonous, and where these resources could be found beneath layers of snow and ice. This delicate balance between scarcity and abundance was a defining feature of their winter survival strategies. Foraging in winter was fraught with challenges. Many plants had died back, while others were dormant, leaving only hardy roots, bulbs, and bark as potential nourishment. Cavemen developed techniques to extract these resources, such as digging through frost-hardened soil or scraping away snow to access buried tubers. Roots and underground vegetables were especially valuable because they offered concentrated nutrients and could often be stored for longer periods. The act of digging through frozen earth required ingenuity, endurance, and careful timing, as exposure to the cold during these tasks could be as dangerous as the scarcity of food itself. Berries and seeds, though less abundant in winter, provided vital vitamins and calories when located. Cavemen memorized the locations of bushes and trees that retained fruit or seeds longer into the cold months, creating mental maps of their territory. They also developed storage techniques, drying or freezing gathered items for use during lean periods. This foresight and knowledge of seasonal cycles allowed humans to mitigate the unpredictability of winter scarcity. The contrast between the apparent barrenness of a snow-covered landscape and the hidden resources it contained illustrates the deep observational skills and intelligence required for survival. Gathering was not merely about nourishment. It also supported other survival strategies. Certain plants provided materials for clothing, insulation, or fire starting. Bark could be used to wrap food or protect hands during digging, while fibrous plants could serve as rope or bedding. Cavemen had to understand these dual uses, blending nutrition and utility in every foraging expedition. This combination of practicality and resourcefulness exemplifies the broader principle of adaptability, which defined prehistoric life. Each item collected was evaluated not only for immediate benefit, but also for its potential to support broader survival systems. Social dynamics also played a role in foraging. Small groups or pairs often went out together, sharing knowledge of plant locations and techniques. Elders who had spent years observing seasonal patterns guided younger members, teaching them the subtle signs of edible plants or underground storage areas. This passing down of knowledge reinforced communal bonds, enhanced group survival, and ensured that each generation retained the lessons learned through decades of observation and trial. Foraging thus became both a practical and cultural activity, blending sustenance with education and cooperation. The psychological benefits of foraging were significant. In a winter landscape dominated by scarcity and cold, finding food brought relief, security, and a sense of mastery over the environment. These small successes countered the constant fear of starvation and boosted morale. The contrast between the danger of hunger and the reward of even a modest cache of edible plants underscored the delicate balance of survival. Cavemen learned to celebrate these victories, reinforcing the behaviors and strategies that would help them endure future winters. Some plant resources also had medicinal or functional value. Certain roots or barks could soothe ailments, treat minor injuries, or aid digestion during periods of heavy meat consumption. Early humans were keen observers, noting the effects of particular plants on their bodies and remembering which had beneficial properties. This knowledge allowed them to supplement their diet not only nutritionally, but also therapeutically, blending survival with emerging medicinal practices. The line between nourishment and healing often blurred, highlighting the interconnected nature of life in harsh environments. Environmental awareness was critical in gathering. Cavemen had to track animal movements, snowmelt patterns, and soil conditions to locate the best resources. Ice and snow obscured much of the landscape, demanding patience, intuition, and learned experience. They developed an almost symbiotic relationship with the land, understanding its rhythms and signs in ways modern humans rarely experience. This intimate knowledge of the environment allowed them to turn apparent scarcity into opportunity, making the frozen world a source of both sustenance and insight. Storage and preservation were essential extensions of gathering practices. Cavemen learned to keep roots and other perishables in insulated areas, under snow or within makeshift caches, ensuring food availability over longer periods. This foresight required planning, memory, and an understanding of decay and spoilage under cold conditions. The ability to anticipate future needs was as critical as the act of collection itself, demonstrating the advanced cognitive abilities of early humans. Food was not simply gathered. It was strategically managed to optimize survival chances during prolonged winter months. In essence, gathering and foraging during winter were acts of intelligence, observation, and adaptation. They complemented hunting by providing steady, reliable sources of nutrition and essential materials. This dual approach to winter survival, combining the high-risk, high-reward hunting of large game with the steady, knowledge-based collection of plant resources, illustrates the depth of prehistoric human ingenuity. By mastering the hidden pantry of nature, cavemen ensured not only their immediate survival, but also the development of skills, traditions, and knowledge systems that would endure for generations. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, fire was far more than a source of light. It was the difference between life and death. Cavemen quickly realized that mastering fire meant mastering survival itself. The cold was relentless, and exposure during long nights could lead to hypothermia within hours. Fire offered warmth, protection, and the ability to cook food, transforming the human experience of winter from one of passive suffering to active survival. It was a tool that reshaped not only the body's ability to endure the cold, but also social structures, daily routines, and cognitive development. Fire had to be carefully tended and maintained, especially in conditions where snow, wind, and ice threatened to extinguish it. Cavemen relied on natural materials such as dry wood, grasses, and kindling gathered during the brief daylight hours, often risking frostbite to ensure their hearths remained burning. The contrast between the life-sustaining glow of a fire and the deadly darkness beyond its light was immediate and visceral. One misplaced log or a gust of wind could snuff out warmth, leaving a group exposed to freezing temperatures. The stakes were absolute, and the act of maintaining fire demanded both skill and vigilance. The process of creating fire itself required ingenuity. While lightning strikes could offer natural ignition, humans quickly developed techniques to produce flame independently. Friction-based methods, such as rubbing sticks together or striking flint against pyrite, became critical skills. Fire-making was labor-intensive, often requiring hours of effort, careful selection of materials, and precise technique. Those who mastered it gained not just immediate warmth, but a lasting advantage over those who depended solely on chance. Knowledge of fire-making became a key survival skill, passed from elders to the younger generation, forming a cornerstone of communal life and cultural continuity. Fire offered protection beyond warmth. Predators feared the flames, and the glow of a fire could deter wolves, bears, and other carnivores that prowled nearby. Shelter alone was insufficient to repel these threats. Fire acted as both barrier and warning system, signaling human presence and creating a zone of safety. The contrast between the exposed, cold wilderness and the secure perimeter of a fire-lit camp emphasized its life-saving importance. Every night spent around a well-maintained fire reinforced its value and underscored the danger of neglect. Cooking was another revolutionary aspect of fire mastery. Raw meat and plants often required heat to become digestible or safe for consumption. Cooking not only improved nutrition, but also reduced the risk of foodborne illness, a critical concern when energy reserves were limited and sickness could quickly become fatal. Moreover, cooking allowed cavemen to extract more calories from their food, maximizing the benefits of each hunt or foraging expedition. The contrast between the energy gained from cooked food versus raw food demonstrates how fire directly enhanced the human body's ability to survive harsh winters. Fire also reshaped social life and daily routines. It became a gathering point, a space where stories were told, skills were taught, and relationships were strengthened. The warmth of the hearth facilitated communal bonding, reinforcing cooperation and trust, which were essential for group survival. Elders could teach hunting strategies, foraging knowledge, and cultural rituals around the fire, passing down critical survival skills to the next generation. This social dimension transformed fire from a mere survival tool into a central pillar of Ice Age human culture, shaping community identity and resilience. In addition, fire influenced movement and settlement patterns. Camps had to be positioned to optimize fuel access, safety, and exposure to wind and snow. Strategic placement of fires within shelters allowed for maximum warmth and minimal risk of spreading flames. This required not only technical understanding, but also careful planning and foresight, reflecting the advanced cognitive abilities of early humans. Fire, therefore, was not just a tool, but a framework around which daily life, social organization, and survival strategies were constructed. The psychological impact of fire cannot be overstated. In an environment dominated by fear, scarcity, and cold, the presence of a fire provided reassurance and a sense of control. Its flickering glow symbolized safety, continuity, and hope. Cavemen understood, instinctively, that their survival depended on maintaining this vital resource. The contrast between the terror of the night outside the fire's glow and the comfort of its warmth reinforced the dual nature of the human experience during winter. Fear and ingenuity, vulnerability and resilience, danger and protection. Fire also enabled innovation in other survival domains. With warmth and light, cavemen could work on tools, process hides for clothing, or prepare shelters even after the sun had set. It extended productive hours and allowed activities that would have been impossible in the darkness and cold. This created a feedback loop. Mastery of fire enabled better tools and shelters, which in turn improved the ability to maintain fire under challenging conditions. The cumulative effect was a substantial enhancement of winter survival prospects. Seasonal reliance on fire also shaped long-term human behavior and cognition. Humans learned to predict fuel availability, conserve resources, and prioritize energy expenditure in cold conditions. These strategies required abstract thinking, memory, and planning, cognitive traits that set early humans apart from other species. Fire thus acted as both a physical and intellectual catalyst, enhancing survival while stimulating problem-solving and social coordination. Ultimately, mastering fire was more than a survival tactic. It was a transformation of human life. It allowed early humans to endure extreme cold, process food efficiently, deter predators, and create social cohesion. The interplay between fire, the human body, and the harsh winter environment illustrates how technological mastery can amplify biological resilience. Fire bridged the gap between vulnerability and capability, turning fear into opportunity, isolation into community, and passive exposure into active adaptation. In the frozen expanse of the Ice Age, fire was the lifeline against death. Its mastery represents one of humanity's earliest and most profound achievements, laying the foundation for subsequent innovations in clothing, shelter, hunting strategies, and social organization. Understanding fire's central role in winter survival provides a lens through which we can view the ingenuity, courage, and adaptability of prehistoric humans, setting the stage for the next sections on shelter, clothing, and social cooperation. In the relentless cold of the Ice Age, fire alone could not guarantee survival. Cavemen had to protect their bodies from biting winds, freezing temperatures, and drifting snow, making shelters and clothing essential components of winter endurance. These structures were far more than temporary refuges. They were lifelines, carefully designed to preserve warmth, block the elements, and create a safe environment for sleeping, cooking, and social interaction. Clothing, similarly, was not mere adornment, but a critical extension of the body's natural defenses, providing insulation and protection for vulnerable extremities. Together, shelters and clothing formed the physical foundation of winter survival. Early humans displayed remarkable ingenuity in constructing shelters. Natural formations such as caves and rock overhangs provided immediate protection from the elements, but cavemen often enhanced these spaces with walls, windbreaks, and bedding made from animal hides. These modifications transformed raw natural shelters into more comfortable, controlled environments capable of retaining heat. In open terrain where caves were unavailable, temporary structures like lean-tos, tents, and igloo-like constructions made from snow, wood, and hides offered similar protection. The contrast between exposed individuals shivering in the wind and those insulated within a well-constructed shelter illustrates the critical role of architectural skill in survival. Shelter placement was strategic. Cavemen had to consider wind direction, snow accumulation, and proximity to water and firewood. Sites were chosen not only for protection, but also for access to resources essential for daily life. Communal shelters allowed multiple individuals to huddle together, conserving body heat and facilitating social interaction. In these early living spaces, warmth was shared and survival strategies were practiced collectively. The physical environment, combined with human ingenuity, turned even the harshest landscapes into livable spaces, highlighting the adaptive capabilities of prehistoric communities. Clothing was equally vital. Layers of animal hides, furs, and woven materials provided insulation, protecting the body from frostbite and heat loss. Cavemen understood the importance of covering extremities, hands, feet, ears, and faces, using mittens, boots, and head coverings crafted from durable materials. The process of creating clothing was labor-intensive, often requiring tanning, stitching, and layering, but the payoff was immediate. Mobility, warmth, and protection that could mean life or death during extended exposure to the elements. Clothing served not only functional purposes, but also reinforced social cohesion, as the sharing of materials and skills strengthened bonds within a group. Shelters and clothing were closely interconnected with fire mastery. A well-placed hearth within a shelter enhanced heat retention, allowing for longer periods of rest and activity even during the darkest, coldest nights. Clothing allowed individuals to move outside the immediate warmth of the fire without suffering rapid heat loss. Together, these innovations created a multi-layered survival system where each element complemented the others, illustrating the sophisticated understanding of environmental challenges that early humans possessed. The materials used for shelters and clothing were carefully selected for both durability and insulation. Thick hides from large mammals, layered furs, and flexible branches provided the necessary combination of strength and comfort. Cavemen also experimented with positioning and layering, understanding that trapping air between layers could increase warmth. Bedding made from grasses, moss, and softer hides further insulated individuals from the frozen ground, reducing the risk of hypothermia during sleep. Every detail, from construction to material selection, was informed by necessity and experience. Shelters also served as centers of social life and skill transmission. While fire provided warmth, shelters created a safe space for communal activities, teaching, and storytelling. Elders could pass on knowledge about hunting, foraging, and ritual practices within these protected spaces, ensuring the continuity of survival strategies across generations. Children learned to observe, imitate, and eventually master essential skills in a controlled, less dangerous environment. The contrast between vulnerable exposure outside and the secure, structured life within the shelter highlights the intersection of survival, social cohesion, and cultural development. In addition to providing physical protection, shelters and clothing had psychological importance. The cold and darkness of winter could induce fear, stress, and fatigue, yet the presence of a secure space and insulating garments fostered confidence and resilience. Knowing that warmth and shelter were available reduced anxiety and allowed for better decision-making, whether in hunting, foraging, or guarding against predators. This combination of physical and psychological support created a feedback loop that increased survival odds and reinforced the value of careful planning, preparation, and innovation. The evolution of shelter and clothing also reflects adaptive learning over generations. Techniques improved as knowledge accumulated, and groups refined designs based on experience with extreme weather conditions. The cumulative effect was the development of sophisticated strategies that maximize comfort, safety, and efficiency, highlighting the intelligence and foresight of prehistoric humans. Shelter and clothing became symbols of ingenuity, representing both survival and a human ability to manipulate the environment to their advantage. Ultimately, shelters and clothing were not simply tools. They were essential components of a survival system that allowed humans to endure one of the harshest climates in history. By combining natural resources, practical knowledge, and social cooperation, cavemen transformed the frozen world into a manageable environment. This mastery of space and protection demonstrates the ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability that defined Ice Age life. The interplay between shelter, clothing, and fire set the stage for subsequent sections on social bonds, rituals, and daily life, showing how these practical innovations created the foundation for complex communal living, cultural development, and enduring human survival strategies. In the freezing expanses of the Ice Age, survival was rarely an individual endeavor. Cavemen depended on one another not only for practical tasks like hunting, gathering, and shelter building, but also for emotional support and protection. The harsh winter created a landscape of vulnerability where isolation often meant death, and the bonds within families and communities became a crucial lifeline. Social cohesion allowed humans to endure conditions that would have overwhelmed solitary individuals, illustrating the interdependence of biology, psychology, and culture in prehistoric survival. Family units formed the core of communal life. Elders, adults, and children each played specific roles that balanced the needs of the group. Adults undertook labor-intensive tasks, such as hunting, foraging, fire maintenance, and shelter construction, while children were gradually trained to observe and assist, learning critical survival skills. The elderly, meanwhile, acted as knowledge keepers, guiding younger members through the complex rhythms of winter life. This division of labor was not rigid, but flexible, adapting to the immediate needs of the community and the challenges posed by the environment. The interplay of roles reinforced both survival and social cohesion, creating a system where every member contributed to collective endurance. Winter intensified the necessity of cooperation. Cold, scarcity, and danger amplified the risks faced by individuals, making collaborative strategies essential. Sharing food, for instance, reduced the risk of starvation for weaker members and ensured that children, pregnant women, and the injured received adequate nutrition. Group hunting allowed for greater efficiency and safety, when pursuing large, dangerous prey. Similarly, cooperative construction of shelters and maintenance of fire increased the likelihood that all members could survive the cold nights. These strategies highlight the interplay between social intelligence and environmental adaptation, showing how human communities developed complex behaviors to overcome harsh conditions. Emotional bonds were equally critical. The psychological stress of long, dark winters could lead to fear, despair, and tension, yet the presence of supportive social networks provided comfort and resilience. Huddling together around a fire or within a shelter not only conserved warmth but reinforced trust, communication, and shared responsibility. Social rituals, storytelling, and communal activities offered distraction from environmental hardships while strengthening cohesion. These practices reduced anxiety, maintained morale, and allowed the group to function effectively despite constant external threats. The contrast between isolation, which magnified vulnerability, and collective living, which provided security, underscores the survival value of social bonds. Child rearing in winter was particularly challenging and central to community survival. Infants and young children were especially vulnerable to cold, hunger, and illness. Families ensured constant supervision, layering children in furs, keeping them near fires, and sharing responsibilities across adults. Older children were trained in observation, hunting, and gathering techniques, slowly building the skills they would need to contribute to the group's survival. This intergenerational education created continuity, allowing survival knowledge to be preserved and refined across decades. Winter, with its heightened risks, acted as both teacher and filter, emphasizing the importance of attentive care, patience, and early skill development. Conflict resolution within groups also played a role in winter survival. Tensions naturally arose in confined shelters, where scarcity and stress could provoke disputes. Maintaining harmony was essential, as discord threatened cooperative strategies and could jeopardize survival. Early humans likely developed informal social rules, leadership hierarchies, and methods for negotiation to ensure cooperation. These social structures reinforce communal decision-making, resource allocation, and coordinated responses to external threats, emphasizing how survival shaped not just physical behaviors, but also emergent social norms and psychological strategies. Cooperative defense against predators was another aspect of social bonding. Wolves, bears, and other carnivores were active threats, particularly during winter when prey animals became scarce. Group vigilance, strategic placement of sentries, and coordinated use of fire and weapons allowed communities to mitigate these dangers. The safety of the collective depended on the attentiveness and cooperation of each member. The contrast between an isolated individual at risk and a coordinated group demonstrates the life-saving value of social organization, where the whole became greater than the sum of its parts. Food-sharing rituals further strengthened community cohesion. Communal meals around the fire not only provided nourishment, but also reinforced social ties and trust. The distribution of resources, particularly during periods of scarcity, demonstrated fairness, reinforced leadership, and strengthened group morale. This sharing was a practical survival tactic and a psychological strategy, ensuring that all members remained physically and emotionally capable of enduring winter hardships. Trust and reciprocity became essential for survival, creating social norms that extended beyond immediate needs into broader cultural frameworks. The winter environment also shaped intimate aspects of family life. Close physical proximity for warmth encouraged bonding, mutual care, and the development of empathy. Social interaction in these conditions became more meaningful, as every member's well-being had a direct impact on collective survival. Group rituals, storytelling, and shared problem-solving fostered cognitive development, memory, and the ability to anticipate future challenges. Through these interactions, social bonds reinforced both survival and culture, transforming the cold and dangerous landscape into a space where human ingenuity and cooperation could flourish. In essence, family and social bonds were as crucial to survival as fire, shelter, and food. The structure, cooperation, and emotional support within communities allowed cavemen to endure extreme conditions, share knowledge, and prepare younger generations for the challenges of life in the Ice Age. Together, these bonds created resilience that was both physical and psychological, ensuring that groups could persist through winters that would otherwise have decimated isolated individuals. The interplay of warmth, shared labor, and collective vigilance illustrates how social intelligence became a cornerstone of human adaptation. Ultimately, the story of social bonds and family life in winter demonstrates that survival was never a solitary endeavor. Life in the Ice Age demanded interdependence, trust, and the cultivation of both practical and emotional skills. By examining these dynamics, we gain insight into the profound ways in which harsh environments shaped human society, culture, and cooperation. Social bonds transform vulnerability into strength, fear into coordination, and isolation into a thriving communal system, setting the stage for the next section on rituals and spiritual practices that further reinforce cohesion and resilience. In the long, dark winters of the Ice Age, survival depended not only on physical adaptations and practical skills, but also on the human mind's capacity to find meaning and exert control over a harsh, unpredictable world. Cavemen lived with constant threats: starvation, frostbite, predators, and the ever-present uncertainty of the environment. In response, they developed rituals, myths, and early spiritual practices that helped them cope with fear, reinforce social bonds, and make sense of the natural forces shaping their lives. These winter rituals were as crucial for mental resilience as fire, clothing, and food were for physical survival. Rituals often revolved around fire, a central element in both practical and symbolic life. Flames provided warmth, light, and protection, but they also became a focus for communal ceremonies. Gathered around the hearth, communities performed symbolic acts intended to ensure safety, attract game, or honor ancestors. Chanting, drumming, or rhythmic movements may have accompanied these activities, creating a psychological buffer against fear and uncertainty. The contrast between the dangerous, frozen world outside and the safe, ritualized space around the fire highlights the dual purpose of these practices: practical coordination and emotional fortification. Symbolic thinking likely played a role in early survival strategies. Cave paintings, carvings, and simple figurines suggest that Ice Age humans imbued animals, landscapes, and natural phenomena with spiritual significance. By attributing agency or intention to these elements, cavemen could conceptualize the environment in ways that guided decision-making. For example, marking successful hunting sites or depicting animals in ritual spaces could have reinforced knowledge of migration patterns, hunting techniques, or seasonal behaviors. These symbolic practices strengthen the connection between observation, memory, and survival, blending practical information with cultural meaning. Seasonal rituals were particularly important during winter, when scarcity and danger were most acute. Communities likely observed celestial patterns, changes in temperature, or environmental cues to predict animal movements, weather, and food availability. Ceremonies marking the solstice or other astronomical events may have reinforced group cohesion and transmitted essential survival knowledge. By linking ritual to environmental awareness, early humans created structured ways to interpret and respond to natural cycles, increasing their ability to anticipate risks and opportunities. The intertwining of ritual and practical survival illustrates the sophisticated cognitive strategies that developed under extreme conditions. Rituals also reinforced social hierarchy and cooperation. Leaders or elders often guided ceremonies, mediating conflict, coordinating hunts, or organizing resource distribution. Participation in communal rituals strengthened obedience, trust, and group identity, ensuring that critical survival strategies were followed. Shared ritual activities created emotional cohesion, reducing stress and reinforcing mutual reliance. The contrast between solitary fear and collective ritual underscores the importance of culture as a tool for resilience, allowing groups to channel anxiety into structured, supportive practices. The psychological benefits of ritual were profound. Ice Age winters were long, dark, and isolating, and the human mind is particularly sensitive to uncertainty. Rituals provided predictability, a sense of control, and emotional release. Repetitive actions, songs, or chants likely reduced stress and anxiety, enhancing group focus and problem-solving abilities. In environments where distraction or despair could have fatal consequences, these practices were not mere superstition. They were essential mental tools for survival, helping humans maintain alertness, decision-making capacity, and group cohesion. Myth and storytelling were natural extensions of ritual. Tales of successful hunts, encounters with predators, or the actions of ancestors were likely shared around the fire, blending practical guidance with moral and social lessons. Stories preserve knowledge of animal behavior, environmental patterns, and group strategies while simultaneously reinforcing social norms. By transmitting this information through narrative, cavemen ensured that each generation inherited both practical skills and the psychological frameworks necessary to endure winter hardships. The interplay of myth and utility highlights how cognitive and cultural evolution supported survival in extreme environments. Some rituals may have involved early forms of magic or symbolic intervention. Objects such as carved animal figures, painted symbols, or ritual tools suggest an attempt to influence outcomes in hunting, weather, or protection. While modern observers might view these as superstition, they serve practical psychological functions, reinforcing attention to critical tasks, strengthening group coordination, and providing hope in situations where control was limited. The symbolic actions of ritual offered a sense of agency against an otherwise indifferent and dangerous environment. Rituals also influence preparation for the harshest nights. Special practices may have been observed before winter or during storms, such as communal feasts, fire rituals, or protective ceremonies around shelters. These activities fostered coordination, ensured that resources were properly allocated, and mentally prepared the group for periods of scarcity. They reinforced social cohesion at times when it was most vital and created structured approaches to uncertainty, emphasizing both practical readiness and psychological resilience. Belief systems also shaped ethical behaviors, promoting sharing, care for vulnerable members, and the avoidance of conflict. In conditions where survival depended on cooperation, moral codes embedded in ritual practice reduced destructive behaviors and enhanced collective endurance. Caring for children, the elderly, and injured members was not just altruism, but a functional strategy reinforced through cultural norms, ceremonies, and shared storytelling. These early ethical frameworks were directly connected to winter survival, illustrating the deep integration of mind, society, and environment. Ultimately, winter rituals and beliefs exemplify the intersection of culture, psychology, and survival strategy. They mitigated fear, reinforced cohesion, preserved knowledge, and guided practical actions in a landscape dominated by cold, scarcity, and predators. By blending symbolic thought with tangible survival practices, Ice Age humans created a sophisticated mental and social toolkit that complemented fire, clothing, hunting, and shelter. Rituals were not separate from survival. They were an essential component of the prehistoric strategy for enduring extreme environments. In essence, the rituals, myths, and spiritual practices of Ice Age humans reveal the deep connection between mind, body, and environment. Winter was more than a season of cold. It was a testing ground for resilience, creativity, and social intelligence. By observing, interpreting, and ritualizing the natural world, early humans transformed fear into structured behavior, chaos into predictability, and vulnerability into collective strength. These practices set the stage for the next sections on animal encounters, migration, and the broader strategies that enabled humans to survive not just days or months, but entire lifetimes in the frozen wilderness. Winter in the Ice Age was not only a test of human endurance, but also a constant confrontation with the animal world. For prehistoric humans, Animals were both indispensable resources and formidable threats. Large herbivores like mammoths, bison, and reindeer provided essential food, clothing, and tools, while predators such as wolves, cave lions, and saber-toothed cats posed life-threatening dangers. Understanding the dual role of animals, both as allies and adversaries, was critical for survival. Cavemen had to navigate a delicate balance between hunting for sustenance, avoiding predation, and exploiting animals for multiple practical purposes. The first step in survival was observation. Early humans developed keen senses and cognitive abilities to track and predict animal behavior. Understanding migration patterns, feeding grounds, and predator-prey interactions allowed cavemen to anticipate opportunities for hunting while avoiding ambushes. For example, noticing where herbivores congregated in winter could lead to successful hunts, but it also signaled the possible presence of predators. The contrast between the frozen stillness of the landscape and the hidden movements of animals created a constant tension, sharpening awareness and honing survival instincts. Large herbivores were both a blessing and a challenge. Hunting a mammoth or bison required coordination, intelligence, and often prolonged effort. These animals offered vast amounts of meat, fat, and hide, critical resources for warmth, food, and shelter, but the risks were significant. Groups had to strategize, using terrain, fire, and tools to their advantage. Ambushes, coordinated drives, and careful tracking were necessary to reduce danger. The successful hunt reinforced communal cooperation, provided high-calorie nutrition for weeks, and allowed materials for clothing, shelter, and tools, demonstrating the multifaceted importance of animal allies. Predators, on the other hand, presented constant threats. Wolves traveled in packs, utilizing strategy and persistence to hunt weakened prey. Cave lions and saber-toothed cats possessed power and stealth, capable of killing a human if underestimated. Cavemen had to recognize predator behaviors, maintain vigilance, and sometimes engage in direct defense. Fire, weapons, and shelters became extensions of human survival against these threats. The contrast between the danger of a predator encounter and the safety of a fortified shelter or a well-prepared group emphasizes the necessity of strategic thinking, risk assessment, and group coordination in the frozen wilderness. Smaller animals also played essential roles. Rabbits, hares, birds, and fish offered supplementary nutrition and were easier to capture during lean months. Traps, snares, and simple hunting techniques allowed humans to exploit these sources efficiently. These smaller prey provided not only calories but also materials such as feathers for bedding or bones for tools, showing that survival depended on a layered approach to animal resources. Early humans learned to value every opportunity, recognizing that the combined use of large and small animals could sustain a group even in the harshest conditions. Animal tracking was a refined skill, especially in winter when snow revealed footprints, trails, and feeding signs. Reading these tracks allowed humans to anticipate movement, plan ambushes, and avoid predator territories. Understanding snow conditions, ice formations, and environmental changes further enhanced tracking accuracy. Each observation became part of a cumulative knowledge base that increased survival odds. The contrast between a novice struggling to follow tracks and an experienced tracker anticipating animal behavior demonstrates how intimate knowledge of the natural world was a matter of life or death. Humans also formed symbiotic relationships with some species. Dogs, which may have been partially domesticated during this period, provided early warning, assistance in hunting, and protection against predators. Their presence enhanced safety, extended hunting efficiency, and strengthened the bonds between humans and their environment. This early animal partnership illustrates the ingenuity and adaptability of prehistoric humans, as well as their ability to identify and cultivate mutually beneficial relationships within a dangerous ecosystem. Predators influence social behavior and group strategies. Night watches, rotations for fire maintenance, and coordinated hunting trips minimized exposure to risk. Groups learned to respect predator territories, avoid unnecessary confrontations, and exploit predator behavior for hunting advantage. For example, scavenging from predator kills or tracking herbivores driven by predator pressure allowed humans to feed while reducing direct danger. These adaptive strategies highlight the interconnectedness of risk management, observation, and social coordination in survival. Animals were also central to culture, myth, and ritual. Cave paintings often depicted animals, emphasizing their significance in daily life, spiritual beliefs, and survival strategy. Successful hunts or encounters with predators became stories and teaching tools, reinforcing communal memory and knowledge. By integrating observation, mythology, and ritual, humans ensured that lessons learned from interactions with animals were preserved across generations. The psychological and cultural dimensions of human-animal interactions demonstrate that survival was both practical and symbolic, blending physical necessity with cognitive sophistication. The interplay between dependence and danger shaped the human psyche. Each interaction with an animal required calculation, attentiveness, and skill. Hunger could drive risk-taking, while prudence ensured longevity. Humans developed an acute awareness of cause and effect, refining decision-making under pressure. The contrast between the abundance of food provided by successful hunts and the threat posed by predators reinforced cognitive growth, teaching early humans to assess risk, plan meticulously, and act decisively. Ultimately, animals were central to both sustenance and survival strategies. Understanding, tracking, and utilizing animal resources allowed Ice Age humans to navigate extreme winter conditions. The dual role of animals as providers and threats drove the development of sophisticated behaviors, social coordination, and cognitive skills. By observing and interacting with the natural world, early humans created a dynamic relationship with their environment, one that balanced respect, utilization, and defense. The story of animals in winter survival sets the stage for the next section on migration, journeys, and the strategic movements necessary to endure long-term environmental challenges. For Ice Age humans, survival was rarely confined to a single location. Winter brought scarcity, freezing temperatures, and limited resources, compelling groups to move across vast landscapes in search of food, shelter, and safety. Migration was not random wandering. It was a carefully orchestrated response to environmental cues, animal movements, and seasonal cycles. Understanding when and where to travel became essential, with miscalculations often resulting in hunger, exposure, or deadly encounters with predators. Winter journeys demanded endurance, foresight, and communal cooperation, making migration a central aspect of prehistoric survival strategy. The driving force behind migration was often the movement of herds. Large herbivores, the primary source of meat, fur, and fat, followed seasonal patterns dictated by food availability and environmental conditions. Humans, in turn, tracked these herds, relying on knowledge of past movements, signs in the snow, and environmental indicators. Tracking required keen observation, memory, and coordination, as following a herd too closely could alert predators or result in exhausting pursuit across difficult terrain. The contrast between the static dangers of a frozen landscape and the dynamic opportunities presented by migrating animals illustrates the constant tension and strategy underlying human movement. Migration routes were influenced by geography and climate. Valleys, riverbanks, and mountain passes provided both access to resources and natural protection against the elements. Groups learned to read the terrain, avoiding hazardous areas while exploiting safe passageways and shelter opportunities along the way. Snow and ice added complexity, forcing humans to calculate energy expenditure versus potential reward. For example, a direct route through a snowfield could be faster but more exhausting, while a longer, sheltered path might conserve energy but extend exposure time. These strategic decisions highlight the sophistication of early human planning and environmental understanding. Timing was critical. Departing too early in winter risked exposure to severe storms and scarce food, while moving too late could result in missing critical hunting opportunities or being trapped by deep snow. Communities developed an acute sense of seasonal indicators, ice formation, animal behavior, weather patterns that informed migration decisions. Observation of celestial bodies, such as the sun's position or the moon's cycles, may also have guided long-distance travel. By synchronizing movement with environmental rhythms, humans maximized resource availability and minimized risk, demonstrating an advanced understanding of ecological patterns. Group cohesion was essential during these journeys. Travel in winter required coordination, with individuals assigned roles based on strength, experience, and knowledge. Leaders might scout routes, elders provide guidance, and hunters locate prey, while others maintain camps or prepared shelters along the way. Effective communication, even with limited language, ensured that all members remained aligned and safe. The contrast between a disorganized group facing disorientation and a coordinated group following clear strategies underscores the life-or-death importance of social intelligence in migration. Food and resource management were intertwined with migration. Groups carried preserved meat, dried roots, and stored plant materials to supplement hunting along the journey. Fire-making tools, bedding, and furs were transported to ensure safety and warmth during temporary stops. These logistical considerations required careful planning, as overloading could slow movement, while under-preparation could be fatal. Migration was thus a complex balancing act, integrating survival skills, resource management, and environmental knowledge into a coherent strategy for endurance. Predator awareness was amplified during winter travel. Moving through unfamiliar territory exposed humans to wolves, large cats, and scavengers that thrived in frozen landscapes. Defensive strategies included traveling in groups, carrying weapons, maintaining fire, and using terrain for protection. Predicting predator behavior and maintaining vigilance were as critical as finding food or shelter, emphasizing that migration was simultaneously an exercise in hunting, navigation, and defense. The interplay of opportunity and danger illustrates the multifaceted challenges of winter journeys. Migration also facilitated knowledge transfer. By following herds and exploring new territories, communities encountered novel plants, animal behaviors, and geographic features. Observations made along these routes contributed to cumulative knowledge that was shared through storytelling, teaching, and ritual practices. Over time, migration patterns became mapped in memory and tradition, allowing successive generations to move more efficiently, anticipate challenges, and maximize survival chances. The contrast between learned, planned movement and random wandering highlights the cognitive sophistication of Ice Age humans. Seasonal journeys reinforced social bonds. Shared hardships, exposure, hunger, and fatigue strengthened cooperation, trust, and communication within groups. Communal problem-solving, whether navigating a frozen river, tracking prey, or erecting temporary shelters, promoted cohesion and interdependence. Winter journeys became not just physical tests, but social exercises, where individuals learned to rely on one another and develop collective strategies. Survival, in this context, was inseparable from social intelligence and emotional resilience. Ultimately, migration in winter exemplifies the adaptive ingenuity of prehistoric humans. By tracking herds, reading the environment, and coordinating group efforts, early humans navigated the harshest landscapes with foresight and strategy. Migration was more than survival. It was a dynamic interplay of observation, planning, cooperation, and risk management. These seasonal movements ensured access to food, shelter, and protection while reinforcing social bonds and passing knowledge across generations. Understanding migration provides crucial insight into the broader survival systems of Ice Age humans, linking hunting, gathering, shelter, and social strategies into a coherent framework for enduring extreme winters. Winter in the Ice Age was not only a battle against the cold, but also a period of heightened conflict. Scarcity of resources, food, shelter, and firewood often intensified competition between neighboring groups. Prehistoric humans had to defend their territory, assert access to hunting grounds, and protect their families from both human and animal threats. The need for vigilance, strategy, and coordinated defense became a central aspect of winter survival, demonstrating how environmental stress shaped social organization and the development of early conflict management. Territoriality was crucial. Groups marked and defended areas rich in resources, such as herds, caves, or dense woodlands suitable for firewood collection. These territories were often defended through displays of strength, warning signals, and sometimes direct confrontations. Encroachment by rival groups could trigger disputes over vital winter resources. The contrast between secure, well-defended communities and vulnerable, isolated individuals highlights the survival advantage of strategic territory management. Territorial defense required not just brute force, but careful planning, observation, and communication. Weapons and tools played a central role in defense. Spears, clubs, and stone blades were not only used for hunting, but also for protecting the group from predators and rival humans. Fire served as a deterrent, both physically, by creating barriers, and psychologically, by signaling human presence and unity. In some cases, simple fortifications, like stakes, walls, or carefully chosen shelter entrances, enhanced protection against attacks. The interplay between offensive and defensive strategies illustrates the adaptive intelligence of Ice Age humans, as every tool and skill was employed to enhance survival in a hostile environment. Human conflict was often influenced by competition for food. Winter scarcity meant that even slight reductions in available game or edible plants could escalate tensions. Groups that coordinated hunting and foraging efficiently could gain a survival advantage, while those less organized faced potential depletion of resources. Conflict over resources was thus not merely aggressive behavior, but a rational response to environmental pressures. The contrast between cooperative groups that shared resources and those engaged in disputes illustrates how social organization and leadership could determine survival outcomes. Defensive strategies extended beyond confrontation. Early humans developed early warning systems, sentries, and patrols to detect approaching threats. Sounds, movements, or smoke signals could communicate danger to the group before a direct encounter occurred. These systems required trust, coordination, and disciplined attention to detail. The success of defense depended on the integration of observation, communication, and rapid response, reflecting both cognitive sophistication and social cohesion. Winter amplified the stakes, as exposure to cold or delayed reaction could quickly turn a minor threat into a deadly situation. Predator threats intersected with human conflict. Wolves and other carnivores often followed or harassed groups during winter, drawn by the scarcity of prey. Attacks could be fatal if humans were unprepared or dispersed. This dual threat, both human and animal, necessitated layered defense strategies, combining group coordination, weapons, fire, and knowledge of predator behavior. The environment itself shaped these strategies as snow, ice, and limited visibility increased both risk and opportunity, reinforcing the adaptive flexibility of early humans. Social organization influenced conflict resolution. Leaders or elders often mediated disputes, decided the allocation of resources, and coordinated defense measures. These structures allowed groups to avoid destructive internal conflict while maintaining readiness against external threats. Sharing responsibilities, observing hierarchies, and adhering to social norms ensured that the group remained cohesive even under pressure. The contrast between chaotic, leaderless groups and structured communities demonstrates how social intelligence became a critical survival tool during harsh winters. Group cohesion during conflict extended to psychological support. Fear, fatigue, and hunger could undermine morale, yet communal vigilance and coordinated action mitigated these risks. Members derived confidence from knowing that others were prepared to defend the group and share burdens. This mutual reliance strengthened social bonds and reinforced cooperative behavior. Winter amplified these pressures, making emotional resilience and trust within the group as vital as physical defense measures. Conflict also shaped mobility and migration decisions. Groups sometimes relocated temporarily to avoid confrontation with rival humans or dangerous predator territories. These movements required planning, knowledge of alternate resources, and coordination to ensure that all members could travel safely. The strategic integration of conflict avoidance with migration exemplifies how survival strategies were multidimensional, blending observation, social intelligence, and environmental awareness into a cohesive plan. Ultimately, winter conflicts and defense highlight the interconnectedness of survival strategies in the Ice Age. Protecting the tribe demanded a combination of tools: fire, social organization, observation, and planning. Success or failure in these endeavors directly impacted access to resources, safety, and long-term survival. Understanding how prehistoric humans navigated these dangers provides insight into the evolution of leadership, cooperation, and conflict management in extreme environments. Conflict was not just aggression, it was a catalyst for social complexity, ingenuity, and adaptive behavior. In essence, defending against human and animal threats was an integral part of enduring winter. Every aspect, from territory management and weapon use to leadership, vigilance, and social cohesion, was essential for survival. The constant presence of danger shaped not only the physical strategies employed by Ice Age humans, but also their psychological resilience, social intelligence, and cultural practices. This balance between aggression, defense, and cooperation set the stage for the next section, which explores the strategic and psychological aspects of hunting in winter conditions. Winter hunting in the Ice Age was a delicate balance of skill, observation, and endurance. The freezing temperatures, deep snow, and scarcity of prey turned every hunt into a high-stakes endeavor. Cavemen had to be precise, patient, and adaptive, understanding the behavior of both prey and predators while navigating treacherous terrain. Hunting was not only about acquiring food, but also about securing materials for clothing, tools, and fire, making it a cornerstone of winter survival. Each expedition required strategic thinking, teamwork, and intimate knowledge of the environment. Preparation was key. Hunters observed herd movements, animal behaviors, and seasonal patterns long before setting out. Tracks in the snow, broken branches, and droppings provided vital clues about the location and size of prey. Knowledge of which animals were most abundant or nutritious during the cold months allowed groups to prioritize targets. This strategic planning reduced wasted effort, minimized risk, and maximized the yield of each hunt. The contrast between prepared hunters and those relying on chance underscores how intelligence and observation were critical survival tools. Winter required specialized tools and techniques. Spears, throwing sticks, snares, and rudimentary bows were adapted for efficiency in freezing conditions. Some groups constructed ice pits or snowdrifts as traps, utilizing the environment to their advantage. Tools had to be crafted with care to withstand cold, brittle materials, and long distances. Even the act of transporting weapons over snow or ice demanded skill and foresight. Each innovation represented a combination of necessity, trial and error, and cultural knowledge passed down through generations. Patience was as crucial as strength. Animals moved slowly and cautiously in the winter, conserving energy in harsh conditions. Hunters often had to wait hours or even days for the right moment to strike. Concealment in snowdrifts, behind rocks, or among sparse vegetation allowed humans to approach prey without being detected. The interplay between predator and prey in winter demanded acute awareness, timing, and stealth. The contrast between successful, patient hunts and hasty, unsuccessful attempts demonstrates how patience directly influenced survival. Coordination and teamwork enhanced hunting efficiency. Groups often surrounded prey, using coordinated movements to drive animals toward traps, cliffs, or ambush points. Communication, whether through gestures, calls, or signals, ensured that hunters acted in unison. The success of such strategies depended on trust, experience, and shared knowledge, emphasizing the social dimension of survival. Hunting became both a test of individual skill and a reflection of group cohesion, illustrating how cooperation amplified survival outcomes. Adaptation to winter conditions was critical. Snow, ice, and frozen rivers altered terrain and prey behavior. Hunters had to adjust movement, stalking techniques, and attack strategies accordingly. For instance, deep snow could slow both hunter and prey, requiring clever routes and energy conservation. Ice-covered water sources demanded careful navigation to avoid accidents while maintaining access to drinking water or aquatic prey. These challenges highlight the ingenuity and flexibility of Ice Age humans, who transformed environmental obstacles into strategic opportunities. Risk management was another essential aspect. Prey could be dangerous, particularly large herbivores like mammoths or bison. Hunters had to assess the risk-to-reward ratio carefully, choosing targets they could kill efficiently without jeopardizing the group. Even small miscalculations could result in injury, frostbite, or death. Winter conditions magnified these risks as exposure, exhaustion, and hypothermia could quickly turn minor incidents into life-threatening situations. The contrast between calculated, cautious hunts and reckless attempts underscores the survival value of planning, skill, and awareness. Food preservation complemented hunting strategies. Meat had to be processed and stored efficiently, as spoilage in winter was less of a concern than in warmer months, but scavengers, freezing conditions, and sudden weather changes still pose challenges. Smoking, drying, or storing meat under snow ensured a stable food supply for days or weeks. Hunters needed to plan not only the capture, but also the long-term utility of their catch, integrating immediate survival with future resource management. This foresight exemplifies the complexity of winter hunting strategies. Hunting also had psychological dimensions. The long hours, harsh weather, and high stakes demanded focus, patience, and resilience. Hunters relied on intuition, experience, and the collective knowledge of their group to maintain morale and confidence. Success reinforced social bonds, strengthened status hierarchies, and ensured that critical skills were respected and transmitted across generations. The interplay of mental fortitude, social structure, and environmental mastery demonstrates how hunting shaped both individual and group survival capacities. Furthermore, hunting in winter reinforced broader survival systems. The meat obtained provided nutrition, the hides and furs contributed to clothing and shelter, and the bones and sinews were transformed into tools, weapons, and fire-making implements. Each successful hunt had a cascading effect on survival, enhancing warmth, protection, mobility, and social cohesion. The integrated nature of hunting, resource use, and social organization illustrates the sophisticated interplay between physical, cognitive, and cultural adaptations. Ultimately, winter hunting strategies were a testament to human ingenuity, patience, and cooperation. They required observation, planning, stealth, adaptability, and resilience in the face of extreme environmental stress. Every aspect, from tool preparation and tracking to teamwork and risk assessment, was designed to maximize survival while minimizing danger. Hunting was more than a necessity. It was a complex practice that reinforced social bonds, transmitted knowledge, and shaped human cognition. In the frozen wilderness of the Ice Age, mastery of hunting represented a pinnacle of adaptive intelligence and strategic thinking, laying the groundwork for continued survival and cultural development in the harshest months of the year. Nighttime in the Ice Age presented some of the greatest challenges to human survival. Darkness, freezing temperatures, and the threat of predators created a world where rest was both vital and perilous. Cavemen had to develop strategies that balanced safety, warmth, and recuperation. Sleep was not simply a biological necessity. It was an intricate survival mechanism shaped by environmental conditions, social structures, and cultural practices. How early humans rested during the coldest months illustrates the complex interplay between physical endurance, psychological resilience, and communal living. Shelter played a central role in nighttime survival. Caves, rock overhangs, and constructed huts provided insulation from wind, snow, and cold air. Within these protected spaces, fire acted as both a source of warmth and a deterrent against nocturnal predators. Bedding made from animal hides, moss, and grasses insulated the body from the frozen ground, reducing heat loss and minimizing the risk of hypothermia. The contrast between exposed individuals shivering in the open and those huddled in secure shelters underscores the life-or-death importance of physical protection. Social factors influence sleep and rest rhythms. Groups often slept together, huddled for warmth and safety. Physical proximity not only conserved heat, but reinforced social bonds, trust, and cooperation. Nighttime responsibilities, such as rotating sentries or maintaining the fire, were coordinated to balance rest with vigilance. This system ensured that the community remained alert to environmental threats while allowing most members to recover from the day's exertions. The interplay between individual rest and collective security demonstrates the sophisticated social strategies that underpin survival. The winter environment also shaped biological rhythms. Shorter daylight hours and prolonged darkness influenced activity patterns, prompting humans to conserve energy and adjust hunting, foraging, and social activities accordingly. Rest periods were aligned with environmental cues, such as temperature drops or predator activity, optimizing survival efficiency. Sleep was fragmented, punctuated by wakeful periods to tend fire, monitor surroundings, or respond to sudden threats. The contrast between uninterrupted, restorative sleep in modern settings and the dynamic, responsive sleep cycles of Ice Age humans highlights the adaptive nature of prehistoric rest strategies. Clothing and bedding materials were essential for nighttime warmth. Layered furs, hides, and moss provided insulation and protected vulnerable extremities. Early humans understood the need to cover feet, hands, and heads to prevent frostbite during sleep. Positioning within the shelter also mattered. Individuals with less robust body mass or higher vulnerability often slept near the center of the group or closest to the fire. These practices illustrate the integration of environmental knowledge, physical protection, and social organization in managing nocturnal survival. Psychological strategies were equally critical. Darkness, isolation, and the unknown could provoke fear, stress, and vigilance fatigue. Rituals, storytelling, and communal songs around the fire before rest served to calm nerves, reinforce cohesion, and pass down survival knowledge. These practices created a sense of predictability and control in an otherwise uncertain environment. Mental preparedness was as essential as physical readiness, demonstrating the interplay between cognitive resilience and environmental adaptation. Predator threats heavily influenced nocturnal behavior. Wolves, bears, and large cats were active at night, requiring humans to maintain vigilance and defensive measures. Fires were strategically positioned to illuminate entrances and deter predators, while watch rotations ensured that at least one individual remained alert. Sleeping positions were often chosen to facilitate quick responses to danger, emphasizing the ever-present balance between rest and readiness. The constant awareness of potential threats shaped not only behavior, but also cognitive alertness and group coordination. Temperature regulation was a continuous concern. Prolonged exposure to cold during winter nights could lead to hypothermia, frostbite, or death. Early humans adapted by insulating themselves, grouping together, and layering materials. Fires were maintained carefully, balancing fuel consumption with heat output, and shelters were constructed to trap warmth efficiently. The ability to manage body heat effectively was a life-saving skill, intertwining knowledge of materials, environmental observation, and communal cooperation. Energy conservation influenced nightly routines. Humans minimized unnecessary movement, staggered activities, and optimized fire placement to retain heat. Nighttime rest allowed the body to recover from hunting, foraging, and travel, replenishing physical and cognitive energy. These rhythms became integrated into daily life, creating predictable cycles that maximized efficiency and survival potential. The contrast between energy-depleted individuals exposed to the cold and those adhering to structured rest routines illustrates the sophistication of prehistoric time management. Sleep also supported memory and learning. Nighttime rest provided an opportunity to consolidate knowledge, recall hunting strategies, and mentally rehearse survival tactics. Dreams or reflective thinking may have reinforced problem-solving and planning abilities, allowing early humans to adapt to environmental challenges more effectively. Cognitive resilience was intertwined with physical recovery, demonstrating the holistic nature of survival strategies during winter nights. Ultimately, winter nightlife reflects the profound adaptability of Ice Age humans. Sleep, rest, and vigilance were not isolated behaviors, but integrated survival strategies shaped by environmental, social, and cognitive demands. Through careful use of shelter, fire, clothing, and social coordination, humans balanced vulnerability with recuperation, transforming perilous nights into manageable periods of recovery and preparation. The interplay between physical safety, mental alertness, and social cohesion created a dynamic survival system that allowed communities to endure the harshest winters. In essence, understanding winter nightlife reveals how prehistoric humans harmonized biology, environment, and culture to survive in extreme conditions. Nighttime was a crucible of endurance, where every decision, from fire maintenance to sleeping position, could determine life or death. These adaptive rhythms set the stage for the final sections, which explore resource conservation, late winter survival strategies, and the eventual transition toward spring, completing the cycle of endurance, ingenuity, and human resilience. Winter presented the harshest test of efficiency and foresight for Ice Age humans. Scarcity of food, fuel, and materials required meticulous planning and disciplined use of every available resource. Survival depended not only on hunting and shelter building, but also on intelligent conservation, recycling, and strategic allocation. Every calorie, every piece of firewood, and every strip of animal hide became precious, and communities developed methods to ensure that nothing was wasted. This focus on resource maximization transformed daily routines, social organization, and even cultural practices into a sophisticated system of winter survival. Food management was central to these strategies. Meat from hunts was portioned carefully, with prime cuts reserved for the most vulnerable or essential members, such as children, elders, or the pregnant. Remaining meat was processed for preservation, smoked, dried, or stored beneath snow to prevent spoilage. Bones and sinews were repurposed into tools, needles, and cordage, extending the utility of each animal beyond sustenance. The contrast between haphazard consumption and deliberate conservation demonstrates the critical impact of planning and foresight on survival outcomes. Plants and edible roots were similarly valued. Seasonal berries, tubers, and nuts were gathered in anticipation of winter and stored in insulated caches. Even small amounts were rationed to extend availability over weeks or months. Knowledge of which plants could be preserved or consumed without adverse effects was passed down through observation, trial, and oral teaching. These practices not only supplied essential nutrients, but reinforced the intergenerational transmission of survival knowledge, highlighting the interplay between memory, cognition, and resource management. Firewood conservation was another critical concern. Wood and other combustible materials were finite, and maintaining warmth over long, freezing nights required careful planning. Communities monitored fuel use, collected fallen branches, and used insulating structures to retain heat efficiently. Fires were strategically positioned to maximize coverage and warmth for sleeping areas, cooking zones, and animal protection. The contrast between wasted, inefficient fires and carefully maintained hearths illustrates how energy management was directly tied to survival. Clothing and shelter were also central to resource conservation. Animal furs were reused, repaired, and layered to maintain insulation. Shelter materials such as wood, stones, and hides were recycled or reinforced to extend lifespan. Constructing shelters that minimized heat loss and weather damage reduced the frequency of resource-intensive repairs or reconstructions. Humans learned to optimize material selection, combining durability with functional efficiency to stretch limited resources as far as possible. These strategies reflect a holistic approach to winter survival, where every material was evaluated for maximum utility. Tool-making incorporated resourceful thinking. Stone, bone, and wood were carefully crafted into multifunctional implements. Broken tools were repaired or repurposed rather than discarded. The ability to extract maximum utility from every item reduced dependence on immediate material acquisition and mitigated the risks associated with scarcity. This culture of ingenuity demonstrates how necessity drove innovation and cognitive development, enabling humans to adapt flexibly to environmental pressures. Hunting efficiency was also influenced by resource management. Groups prioritized prey based on caloric yield, availability of hides, and utility of bones and sinews. Coordinated drives, ambushes, and traps minimized wasted effort and maximized harvests. Successful hunts were integrated into broader planning for the group, ensuring that no part of a captured animal went unused. By linking hunting strategy with conservation practices, Ice Age humans created a comprehensive survival system in which preparation, skill, and prudence worked together. Psychological strategies reinforced conservation efforts. Scarcity could provoke anxiety, frustration, and conflict, but cultural norms, rituals, and storytelling emphasized sharing, fairness, and collective responsibility. Maintaining social cohesion under resource pressure was as important as physical management of food, fuel, and materials. Trust and reciprocity ensured that resources were allocated efficiently and that every individual contributed to the group's endurance. These social dimensions highlight the interdependence of practical skills and community dynamics in winter survival. Water management was another critical aspect. Ice, snow, and limited liquid sources required careful planning for hydration. Ice and snow were melted for drinking water or cooking, and care was taken to prevent contamination. Conserving heat while preparing water involved strategic fire use and insulating techniques. By integrating water management with other resource strategies, humans optimized energy expenditure, demonstrating an advanced understanding of environmental interactions. Late winter required heightened vigilance and adaptation. Depleted resources, increased predator activity, and prolonged cold demanded flexible strategies. Communities often rotated duties, diversified food acquisition, and implemented stricter rationing to survive until spring. Late winter became a period of cumulative endurance, where all prior preparation, knowledge, and cooperation were tested. The contrast between well-prepared groups and those less strategic illustrates the life-saving importance of foresight, discipline, and adaptive planning. Ultimately, resource conservation in winter was a multifaceted endeavor. It integrated food, water, fuel, clothing, shelter, tools, and social coordination into a unified strategy that maximized survival potential. Early humans understood that inefficiency or waste could result in fatal consequences, and their practices reflect a combination of cognitive sophistication, cultural norms, and environmental adaptation. These strategies laid the foundation for long-term resilience, teaching lessons about foresight, patience, and the interconnectedness of all aspects of life in the Ice Age. In essence, winter survival was not merely about immediate responses to cold or hunger. It was a careful orchestration of preparation, conservation, and community cooperation. By maximizing every opportunity, early humans created systems that allowed them to endure months of scarcity and risk, setting the stage for the final sections that explore the transition to spring, reflections on resilience, and the enduring legacy of Ice Age survival strategies. As winter dragged on, Ice Age humans faced the cumulative effects of scarcity, cold, and exhaustion. Yet within this harsh period lay signs of change. Subtle shifts in temperature, daylight, and animal behavior hinted at the approaching spring. Late winter became a time of heightened vigilance, adaptation, and preparation. Communities leveraged their accumulated knowledge and resources to endure the final months, while simultaneously anticipating the opportunities and challenges that the new season would bring. Survival in this transitional period required ingenuity, foresight, and a deep understanding of environmental rhythms. Animal behavior was a key indicator of seasonal change. Herbivore herds began to move toward emerging vegetation, predators followed, and birds returned along predictable migratory paths. Humans observed these subtle cues to adjust hunting strategies, relocate temporary camps, and optimize foraging efforts. Tracking the shifts allowed groups to conserve energy, target high-yield prey, and plan safe routes through challenging terrain. The contrast between still frozen landscapes and the first signs of movement highlighted the dynamic interplay between observation, prediction, and survival strategy. Food management remained critical. Stored resources were running low, making rationing more stringent and strategic. Late winter foraging focused on uncovering hidden or preserved plant foods, small game, and scavenging opportunities. Groups employed collective knowledge to locate caches or exploit seasonal abundance, ensuring that nutrition was sufficient until spring provided renewed options. The careful balancing of consumption and conservation exemplifies how long-term planning was essential for enduring the final stretch of winter. Adaptation extended to physical endurance and psychological resilience. Continuous exposure to extreme cold and limited food required efficient energy use and stress management. Communities emphasized rest cycles, rotational duties, and mutual support to maintain strength. Cultural practices, storytelling, and ritual continued to play a vital role in reinforcing morale, reducing fear, and fostering cohesion. The contrast between isolated struggle and coordinated group effort demonstrates how social organization amplified individual resilience during critical periods. Shelter and fire management remained a constant focus. Maintaining warmth became increasingly challenging as fuel supplies dwindled and temperatures fluctuated. Groups reinforced shelters, optimized fire placement, and rotated duties to ensure that critical areas remained heated. Even small innovations such as windbreaks, insulation improvements, or repositioning bedding had disproportionate effects on comfort, energy retention, and survival odds. Attention to these details illustrates the precision and foresight required to navigate late winter conditions successfully. Preparation for spring also shaped behavior. Humans anticipated the thaw, planning migration to hunting grounds rich with newly accessible game, water, and plant resources. Shelters that had been temporary during the harshest months were inspected and fortified to facilitate early spring activities. Tools and weapons were repaired, sharpened, or replaced in readiness for increased hunting opportunities. This forward-looking mindset reflects the integration of practical survival with environmental prediction, showcasing cognitive sophistication and adaptive planning. Social dynamics played an essential role in late winter survival. Scarcity could heighten tensions, yet cooperation was vital for endurance. Groups relied on leadership, knowledge sharing, and collective problem-solving to navigate challenges. Elder members guided decisions, hunters provided critical updates on prey movements, and all members contributed to daily survival tasks. The contrast between cohesive groups and fragmented or conflict-ridden communities underscores how social intelligence directly influenced survival outcomes in the most demanding period of the season. Predator awareness remained high. Wolves, bears, and other carnivores followed the dwindling herds or scavenged weakened prey, increasing the risk of encounters. Humans remained vigilant, rotating sentries, maintaining fire, and choosing sleeping arrangements that reduced vulnerability. Knowledge accumulated over months, such as predator habits, territorial boundaries, and escape strategies, proved indispensable. The ongoing threat emphasized that survival was a constant negotiation between opportunity, risk, and strategic planning. The promise of spring brought hope and motivation. Longer daylight hours, warmer temperatures, and emerging vegetation signaled the potential for increased resources and reduced environmental stress. This anticipation encouraged strategic risk-taking, exploratory foraging, and gradual expansion of movement. Communities harnessed the psychological boost of approaching abundance to sustain morale and reinforce cooperation. The contrast between the austere, threatening months and the potential of renewal illustrates how hope and environmental cues shaped both behavior and planning. Late winter survival highlights the cumulative effect of the Ice Age survival system. Skills honed over months. Hunting, tracking, fire-making, shelter construction, rationing, and social coordination culminated in the ability to endure and anticipate. Adaptation was continuous, integrating lessons learned from prior challenges while preparing for the opportunities of spring. The careful orchestration of physical, social, and cognitive strategies allowed humans not just to survive, but to thrive in a highly variable environment. Ultimately, late winter demonstrates the resilience, intelligence, and foresight of Ice Age humans. By observing subtle environmental changes, conserving resources, maintaining social cohesion, and planning for the next season, communities navigated the final challenges of winter. This period of adaptation and anticipation bridges the harshest months with the renewal of spring, emphasizing the cyclical nature of survival and the deep interconnection between humans, animals, and the environment. In essence, late winter was both a period of endurance and preparation. It tested physical stamina, cognitive skill, and social harmony while providing vital clues for future survival strategies. This transitional phase exemplifies the dynamic, integrated system that allowed prehistoric humans to navigate extreme winters and prepare for the renewal of life and resources that spring would inevitably bring, completing the overarching narrative of Ice Age survival and human ingenuity. Looking back on the brutal winters of the Ice Age, it becomes clear that human survival was a triumph of intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation. Every challenge, frigid temperatures, scarce food, predators, and rival groups, was met with innovative solutions that blended practical skills, cognitive strategy, and social cohesion. Prehistoric humans transformed environmental adversity into opportunities for learning, skill development, and cultural growth. Winter survival was not merely a daily struggle. It was a crucible that forged resilience, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of the natural world. The physical challenges of winter honed a wide range of survival skills. Hunting, foraging, and tracking required acute observation, precision, and patience. Fire-making, shelter construction, and tool crafting demanded innovation and careful planning. Clothing and bedding were crafted to conserve warmth and protect against frostbite. Even the management of water and firewood became critical exercises in resource allocation and energy efficiency. These physical adaptations highlight how necessity drove creativity and the development of practical knowledge that would sustain communities through harsh conditions. Equally important were cognitive and psychological adaptations. The constant threats and scarcity of winter necessitated advanced problem-solving, strategic planning, and risk assessment. Prehistoric humans had to anticipate animal behavior, navigate challenging terrain, and predict environmental changes to maximize survival chances. Vigilance against predators and rival groups demanded awareness, quick decision-making, and cooperative strategies. The contrast between impulsive or unprepared individuals and those who applied foresight and knowledge illustrates how intelligence and learning were central to endurance. Social organization was a cornerstone of winter survival. Communities relied on cooperation, trust, and shared responsibility to endure the season's challenges. Leadership, experience, and knowledge were respected, with elders and skilled hunters guiding decisions. Rotating tasks, shared vigilance, and communal resource management ensured that the group functioned as a cohesive unit. Social bonds, reinforced by shared hardships, storytelling, and ritual, strengthened morale and improved the efficiency of survival strategies. Winter survival was therefore both a practical and a social achievement, demonstrating that human resilience depends on community as much as on individual skill. Resource management was a critical dimension of survival. Careful rationing of food, firewood, and materials extended the viability of limited supplies. Tools, clothing, and shelter were maintained, repaired, and repurposed to maximize utility. Even small details, like layering hides for insulation, storing dried meat in snow, or conserving water and fuel, could mean the difference between life and death. These practices reflect a sophisticated understanding of scarcity, energy conservation, and long-term planning, emphasizing that survival required foresight and discipline as much as strength and courage. The interplay with the animal world further shaped human development. Prehistoric humans observed, hunted, and coexisted with a variety of creatures, from mammoths and bison to wolves and cave lions. Understanding predator and prey behavior allowed humans to secure nutrition, clothing, and tools while avoiding danger. Domestication of dogs and other early symbiotic relationships enhanced hunting and protection. These interactions fostered not only practical skills, but also cognitive growth, as humans learned to interpret complex behavioral patterns and integrate them into survival strategies. Winter survival also shaped cultural and ritual practices. Storytelling, cave art, and communal activities reinforced knowledge transfer, social cohesion, and morale. Rituals associated with hunting, fire, and protection may have provided psychological stability, helping communities cope with stress, fear, and uncertainty. Cultural traditions ensured that critical lessons and techniques were passed to future generations, embedding survival knowledge into collective memory. In this sense, winter became both a practical teacher and a cultural catalyst, shaping not only behavior, but also identity. The cyclical nature of winter survival fostered adaptability. Observation of seasonal patterns, migration routes, and environmental cues allowed humans to anticipate change and plan accordingly. Communities learned to balance immediate needs with long-term strategies, integrating hunting, foraging, shelter maintenance, and social organization into a coherent system. The contrast between those who could adapt to dynamic conditions and those who could not underscores how flexibility, learning, and experience determine survival outcomes. Adaptability became a defining characteristic of human resilience in the Ice Age. Psychological endurance was as critical as physical survival. Cold, hunger, and isolation imposed mental stress that could undermine performance and decision-making. Strategies such as communal support, role rotation, storytelling, and ritual helped maintain morale, reinforce social bonds, and provide hope. Human cognition was shaped by the need to navigate uncertainty, anticipate risk, and make informed decisions in life-or-death situations. The mental fortitude cultivated through repeated exposure to harsh winters laid the foundation for problem-solving, planning, and strategic thinking that would persist across generations. Ultimately, winter survival during the Ice Age demonstrates the extraordinary capacity of humans to integrate knowledge, skill, and social cooperation. It was not merely a struggle against nature, but a comprehensive system of adaptation involving physical prowess, cognitive sophistication, and cultural ingenuity. Each challenge, from freezing temperatures to scarce resources, predators, and rival groups, demanded a multi-layered response, blending immediate action with long-term planning. Winter became a crucible in which resilience, intelligence, and cooperation were continuously refined. The lessons of Ice Age winters resonate far beyond their time. They highlight the importance of observation, preparation, cooperation, and adaptability in the face of environmental adversity. Humans developed systems to survive and even thrive under conditions that demanded extraordinary skill and ingenuity. The interplay between individual abilities, social structures, and environmental understanding offers a timeless blueprint for resilience. These insights remind us that survival is not only about confronting challenges, but also about learning from them, integrating experience into collective knowledge and anticipating future needs. In essence, reflecting on winter survival reveals the interconnectedness of all aspects of human life in the Ice Age: physical, cognitive, social, and cultural. The extreme conditions of winter fostered innovation, cooperation, and foresight, shaping both daily practices and long-term strategies. By enduring months of cold, scarcity, and danger, prehistoric humans demonstrated the profound adaptability and intelligence that would define the species' continued evolution. Their experiences offer a lasting testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the enduring capacity to navigate and thrive in even the harshest environments.